So I rewatched the finals of every ALGS tournament to answer one question. What would happen if you sent a team back in time 5 years to compete? Would the previous versions of teams we know and love today be able to hold their own? Well, the answer lies in the development of the Apex meta. So I'm going to teach you the history and break down just that for you. Starting with the Poland preseason invitational in September of 2019. Oh, the nostalgia I get from watching each event again, thinking back to my reactions viewing it live. Now, the first thing that shocked me is the playstyle. Everyone played zone, which is when players try to predict where the final ring will end and secure a position as early as possible. You see, in Apex's release, there were not many competitive battle royales. Many pro players came from H1Z1, Fortnite just had its World Cup, and PUBG had a small competitive scene, and in each of these, the mindset was to survive as long as possible and get placement points by playing zone. Now, zone is still a viable and used strategy in 2023, but in 2019, it felt rigid, teams looked scared, and played much more passive. Kings Canyon was the only map in the game. It was small, lacked a good amount of loot, and did not have enough quality landing spots, so many teams didn't have the confidence to fight early. You can see that most of the gameplay was teams rotating early and sitting in a building, and any late rotating teams would find any spot in the ring and simply wait for the next zone to make their move with as little fighting as possible. Also, look at the shields. The Evo shields we have today did not exist, and players didn't even spawn with a shield.
If you watch TSM, they're sitting with 3 white shields with round 4 closing. They're gonna walk up on a fight here, and this is just would be an impossible fight. If you saw a team today sitting with 3 white shields, I'd be going fucking nuts wondering what the hell they were doing the entire time. Because nowadays you see teams are gonna be poking, prodding, and trying to do damage to other teams to level up their shields, obviously. Like, I think Evo shields was hands down one of the best changes to ever happen to Apex.
So these are the first things that influence the legend meta. The way I see Apex meta is that it branches out from legend selection. Any changes to the map, how zones work, your input, loot availability, how you rotate will change the legends used or be changed by the legends being used.
So you'll see here, these are the base starting characters. Like Caustic Mirage also came on drop, and then you had Octane and you had Watson, and that was your character list.
From July 2019 to roughly August 2020 was the Wraith Watson Pathfinder era. Watson was the best defensive legend with her fences to lock down buildings. She could show presence to lock down areas in the open, and her ult provided unlimited shield, which was crucial for the low amount of loot on Kings Canyon. Wraith was the all-around best character in the game, especially for your fragger. Her phase and small hitbox made her great for starting a fight with entry damage and getting out without dying. Her ultimate portal was also the best ability for rotating your entire team into zones without taking any damage. So for a zone meta, you needed that to move from spot to spot. Pathfinder's mobility made him the second best character for fragging out, and his zipline gave the ability of getting height for the team as well as some quick rotation. But the most valuable asset of Pathfinder, which we will talk about a lot throughout this video, was his ability to scan beacons. Today we have several characters that can scan the ring console, and we have others that can get enemy location. But at Poland 2019, Pathfinder was the only character with this ability. Battle Royales are an information game, and knowing just the second zone information significantly increases the chances of teams predicting the final ring. So he was a must pick, and in fact this composition was used by 100% of the teams in the final lobby. But other than that, Apex was mostly about straight gunplay. I will go over how characters influence fights as we travel through the years, but none of Wraith's, Pathfinder's, or Watson's abilities truly changed the outcome of a fight, say like a Horizon Ultimate War. And as such, most players were using mouse and keyboard. Nicewig and Snipedown were the only controller players out of an 80-team international event, and there was a heavy emphasis on shotguns, ARs, and snipers, and the R99. That thing has seriously been a top gun forever. Now, jumping to the ALGS North American Summer Circuit of 2020, the most successful teams up until this point had still been running Wraith, Pathfinder, and Watson, but that was about to change.
This was the event that killed the meta with Pathfinder. Pathfinder's movement had been nuked to the ground, and his hitbox was absolutely huge, so his only existence with comp was the beacon information. As soon as that got put onto other characters, where you see here Bloodhound Crypto could now use survey beacons to get the next ring location, like, he was kind of like useless for comp. He was a liability to his team. For the Summer Circuit playoffs, we saw a heavy usage of Crypto. Teams were still focused on a hard zone mindset, and Crypto could scan beacons from a distance and get a lot of information about player location from the safety of a building. But one team in the lobby was absolutely dominating the competition, and that was Complexity. Complexity is the team that was the forefront of also killing this meta. And there was 4 teams running Bloodhound, but they were the only team running Wraith, KB, Bloodhound, right? So we enter the Gibby Bloodhound meta. On release, these were some of the weakest characters in the game, but through a series of buffs, Gibby became the best support character. Fast revives and mobile cover allowed for quick resets and being able to close open gaps of space when rotating. Bloodhound's scan had been improved, and their ult gave them their scan back every 6 seconds for near constant wall hacks. This provided a huge information advantage in 3v3 fights. Complexity's early mastery of this comp had everyone viewing them as the best team in the world. Instead of playing for placement points, they dominated everyone by focusing on kills. They popularized what is known as the edge playstyle. When they got zone information, instead of rotating towards zone, they actually ran away from it to hunt down teams late rotating and forcing fights with them. Their aggressive composition against defensive ones comprising of Watson gave them a huge comp difference and won them 3v3 fights with ease. Listen to their comms here as they debate about pushing teams outside the zone rather than moving towards endgame.
We have 34 seconds. We can pressure trailer team. Tunnel, 303 is probably gonna come through tunnel actually.
No,
We do have the head peek like on these
I think
pills
we have
as
to go.
well.
I think we have to go south. That's what I was thinking.
Like we go here and then we like look south and we start clearing space.
Yep.
We
Here, I'm
can't let
scanning
anybody
it.
walk up on us without getting punished.
Everything right. Team here. Team
Right
here.
here, yeah.
Crack. Destroyed. Destroyed.
I cracked one.
Yep. I'm looking for an angle.
Cracked. Wraith. I'm getting shot in the back. I'm getting shot in the back. Charge rifle. Care.
Yeah.
Care.
Just
Care.
chill. Just chill.
Just come back. Just come back. There's 2 teams behind us. We gotta focus our northeast. They're gonna
Wait,
get.
no. There's 3 teams. There's 3
One.
teams.
We have to focus on
Yeah,
northeast.
I see where Ref's looking. Those are free kills. Those are free
These are
kills.
free kills. I'm coming up to this box.
Yep.
Just remember, you guys aren't in zone. I'm moving up to the rock right here.
Good. Got one. Got prod.
Nice. Look here.
He's down there. He's down there. We can get the ball.
Yep.
Actually, he's just out of zone. He's just out of zone. Just go. We gotta get in. We
You
should
guys
get
are
in, boys.
reforming back.
We should be careful
I'm
of
still
ourselves.
in.
Be
I'm still
careful
here.
of
It took some time for everyone to buy in, but 3 months after Complexity won the Autumn Circuit playoffs at the Winter Circuit in March of 2021, every team in the finals was running Gibby, Bloodhound, and either Wraith or Octane. Octane, Wraith, this isn't a big meta change. Essentially, like a lot of people in NA Champs started playing Octane instead of Wraith because his jump pad was buffed and gave the ability to rotate a little bit easier than the Wraith portal did at the time. It gave a lot more speed. It also gave the ability to int teams. By int, I mean like by aggressively push a team. So if you got a crack or big damage, you would drop a pad and you jump on them. That's what just came with the Edge playstyle. You can look at the top of the map here. You see we have some teams in zone, but a lot of them are still outside of zone, still rotating in. This is not something that you would have seen at Poland whatsoever. At the same time, this comp couldn't lock down position in a building as good as that Watson composition did. So you kind of always want to be moving, because if you took a spot too early sometimes, it would give the potential that a team was going to send it on you and take you out and kill you. But yeah, so a lot of teams like just went hard edge. It was like a complete overcorrection. Like teams definitely still focused on zone priority because it's the only way you could live in a BR, but teams were dying a lot faster. And this was partly due to World's Edge becoming the only competitive map. It was much bigger than King's Canyon. Getting to that ring first was much harder for teams landing towards the perimeter of the map. Because of Gibraltar, mouse and keyboard was still the preferred input. The use of Gibby's bubble was like a chess match, trying to bait out which Gib would drop their bubble first. Because bubble fights required a lot of poking and strafing in and out of bubbles, shotguns were the dominant guns, providing large burst damage in a short amount of time. At the Year 1 NA Championship, Gibraltar, Bloodhound, and Octane was still used by the best performing teams, but the winners of the event were running something different. Kungurna, who later became 100 Thieves, won match point using a combination of Gibby, Caustic, and Valkyrie. Valkyrie was released in Season 9 and was the first new character to break into the comp meta since Season 3. Many players didn't immediately see her value in fear of being shot down during her ult or bugs that could cost you a game. The ability to practice and scrim at this time was also not widely available, and teams didn't want to waste valuable points during a tournament on an unproven composition. As such, a character that was as strong as Valk flew under the radar for quite some time. Teams like ESA with Verhulst showed the strength of Valk's ultimate as a free rotate, a tactical that did damage and stunned, and movement that made her a top tier fragger. And most important of all, the ability to scan beacons. This enters us into the Gibby Valk Caustic era, which was popularized by these 3 guys right here, actually, not Kungurna, who won. It was Optic Gaming with Skittles, Duplex, and Noct. And that's because after the Year 1 champs in the Split 1 regular season of Pro League, Gibby Caustic Valk actually didn't get run that often. The meta was kind of all over the place. Nothing that really stuck. It was things were developing. So it took to the Split 2 regular season. For starters, Split 2 is the first time Stormpoint had been introduced into the competitive rotation. Again, a map made even larger, being 15% bigger than World's Edge, the previous biggest map in Apex. Its open terrain, water areas, and variation in elevation made it tough for zone teams. This solidified Valk to be meta. If a zone pulled far from your drop, you
may be required to play edge, and Valk provided the opportunity for insane rotates we've never seen before. Gib was sticking around for the same reasons as before, and you may be asking why Caustic. He's got a massive hitbox, no mobility, and you're losing Bloodhound scans. Well, this comp to me is the early stages of a hybrid meta that we see today in Apex. Hybrid is when teams can play zone or edge on the fly based off where the zone pulls. Caustic had his gas damage buffed, and now teammates could walk through it without being slow. He was the best defensive legend in the game since Watson had been nerfed, and it was before Rampart received needed buffs. Plus, he had an aggressive ult, and it countered Gibby, as a common strategy would be to throw gas inside bubbles and force a team out. And the best way to counter a Caustic holding down a building was to use another Caustic, so teams felt required to use him. So this comp gave the ability to play on edge with Gibby Valk, and the best ability to secure locations with Caustic. Now, don't get me wrong, I actually think that this composition leaned more to the zone playstyle, and I don't think it was very good. I think it's talked about a lot because of Optic doing so well at the Split 2 playoffs, same with Reignite and Dark Zero who won with it. Also, at the Year 2 championship, almost every team was running this composition, except one team, who brought us the Seer Horizon Valk meta, and that's Furia. History was repeating itself as Furia's use of an aggressive comp with Seer Horizon Valk picked apart all the holes of Gib Caustic, the same way that Gibraltar Bloodhound Wraith did to Pathfinder and Watson. Seer also somehow flew under the radar. On release, he was probably the most broken character to exist, and people thought after a few nerfs that he was weak, because, well, compared to his release date, he kind of was. But in reality, with this long list of abilities, he was still pretty fucking broken. And he scanned beacons. Horizon was also the best fragging character. She was hard to kill with her gravity lift, and her ultimate provides so much power to a fight. Combine that with a few arc stars, and it was often a clean wipe. So with Furia being the only team to run this composition, they had so much firepower and were able to exploit the weaknesses of Gibraltar Caustic, such as their large hitboxes, lack of movement, and, well, lack of wall hacks. Not to mention a simple gravity lift counters both their ults. Now, Furia didn't win champs, but they had the most points by far, the most kills, and were the first team to match point. And so despite a Caustic Gibby Valk team winning, everyone knew that a change to the character meta was coming again. For almost the entirety of Year 3 Pro League, these characters were a part of the meta in some way. At the very least, you'd see 2 out of 3 on almost every team. The rise of controller players was also a major factor. Many players discovered the strength of the linear response curve, and they began to acknowledge that aim assist really did provide an advantage in close range fights. This created a strong SMG meta. Even after a few nerfs, they're still by far the strongest and most used weapons. But perhaps the biggest thing that developed in Year 3 is the importance of the coaching role. Coaches had been in Apex for a while, but they weren't used by most teams. TSM has repeatedly talked about their lack of macro. Macro is like your overall game plan. What comp you run, what's your drop spot, how you rotate specific zones, and so on. Raven stepped in and solved a lot of these problems, allowing Hal, as the IGL, to focus a lot more on what actually happens during the game. Coaches also helped in being able to study the macro of other teams. So Apex has vastly succeeded being a game based on who has the best mechanics in the game. Everything you do outside the game in terms of studying, VOD reviewing is just as, if not more important. This also meant that when new legends were dropped, teams would be more prepared to test things out because you had coaches who would be trying to find what the best advantages of each character. In the past, as I mentioned, the way metas formed is you would just see whoever won a tournament or did the best and then follow suit. Like there was a kind of joke back then in early years of Apex that whatever TSM was doing, everyone would do. So now you have people who are really focusing on a lot of that outside of the game and doing testing in scrims and in practice ahead of time, could go into the big tournaments, the big Pro League days, with the best game plan possible. And this enters us into the hybrid era with the introduction of Catalyst. Catalyst, in my opinion, is the best hybrid character we've ever seen. She has strong capability to lock down buildings and area. On edge, her ult makes rotating very easy. It's mobile cover like Gibby, but does way more for gaining and creating space, especially in end zones. And most importantly, she is in the controller class. In Season 16, Apex introduced a new class system, and the old Recon characters now scan a beacon that gives player location. The characters in the new controller class are the ones which can scan a ring console and get zone information. Combine that with legends like Horizon and Bangalore, who are amazing for fighting, and you have a flexible team that can play from anywhere. Every team's game plan nowadays revolves around flexibility and being able to play edge or zone at any point of the game. If you look back at everything I've discussed, Apex has been building to this point over 5 years, as every time the meta swings too far to one side of zone or edge, a new comp comes in that takes advantages of its weaknesses. For example, at the Split 2 playoffs, where
NRG was running Rampart, their comp leaned too far to a zone playstyle, and times where they were caught on edge, Rampart became a liability for rotating in. Now, a few notable changes happened between the end of the Year 3 regular season and the Year 3 championship. First, evac towers and nerfs to Valk's thrusters and ult removed her need in the meta, so the dominant picks for the Split 2 playoffs were Catalyst, Seer, and either Horizon or Bangalore. When the Split 2 playoffs concluded, Seer, after almost a year of being a 90% pick rate, was nerfed out of the meta. We saw him a couple times in the group stages of champs, but no more than that. Bangalore became the most picked legend to counter controller players as her smokes disable aim assist, so digi threats became more important, and thus SMGs are still picked most often. And so the most picked and the winning composition at the Year 3 championship was Bangalore Catalyst Horizon, but it was the most diverse tournament we have seen in terms of character composition. So what would happen if you sent a team back in time 5 years? And after everything we went through, I hope it's clear what would happen. With all the available knowledge of the game today, even the tier 2 teams of Apex are good enough that they could run the lobby at Poland. That's not to diss the previous teams or call them bad, they were still miles ahead of everyone else at the time. These are the players that built everything we see today, and why many of them that still compete are at the top of the game. Now, if you enjoyed this, I actually did the whole breakdown live on stream first, so follow the Twitch, sub to the channel, and remember to click the join button below to get yourself ad and sponsor free viewing.